She walked into her own bank, dressed plainly, and was refused a simple cash withdrawal. The branch manager just smirked at her. Minutes later, he was dismissed right in front of the entire staff and customers. She didn't arrive in a corporate vehicle, wasn't wearing a tailored suit, had no assistant, no clipboard, no loud announcement of her arrival at the entrance. Just a woman in her mid-40s, sporting a navy top and gray trousers, clutching her keys in one hand and a basic leather wallet in the other. Kendra Braxton looked like any average customer as she stepped into the Monarch Federal location on Speedway Boulevard in Tucson, Arizona. And that was precisely the intention. She came alone unannounced because often you gain the most insight into an operation when nobody recognizes who you are. The branch lobby was quiet. Fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead. A few patrons occupied cushioned seats near the windows, engaged with their phones or completing deposit slips. Kendra waited patiently behind a gentleman in a bright landscaping uniform who was engaged in light chat with a teller. When her turn arrived, she approached the counter with a pleasant expression. "Good morning," she said. "I'd like to take out some funds from my personal account." The teller, a young woman named Sherry, nodded. "Certainly. I'll require your identification and account details." Kendra presented both. However, before Sherry could proceed, the manager, Stephen Aldridge, early 50s, thin-rimmed glasses, a maroon tie, and a strained smile, approached from his glass-walled office. He glanced at Kendra, then her ID, then back at her. "My apologies," Stephen interjected, "but we cannot process that withdrawal today." Kendra blinked, puzzled. "I don't understand. Is there a problem with my account?" Stephen let out a slight, patronizing chuckle. "Let's just say we've experienced situations. People pretending to be someone else. Significant withdrawals. You know how these things are." Kendra regarded him for a moment, unsure if this was some sort of test. "My account is in excellent standing. I can provide additional verification, if necessary." He didn't request it. Instead, Stephen leaned against the counter with a practiced, condescending air. "We've had fraud attempts previously. No offense, but we don't just accept people's word. And this ID, it doesn't quite resemble you." Kendra tilted her head, striving to remain composed. "It is me. I am Kendra Braxton, CEO of this bank." A customer behind her shifted in line. Sherry quickly looked up from her workstation. Stephen snorted, completely dismissing her statement. "Ma'am, let's not waste our time," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "You'll need to return with proper credentials. Or better yet, schedule an appointment." Kendra looked directly at him. "Stephen, is it?" He gave a curt nod. She paused, then asked slowly, "Did you actually check the account in the system before approaching me?" Stephen crossed his arms. "It's standard procedure. I don't need to look up every ID to recognize when something feels off." That was the decisive moment. Not when he refused the withdrawal. Not even when he questioned her identity. It was when he declared it feels off, as if her mere presence was cause for suspicion. Kendra's expression stayed calm, but internally a knot tightened. She had guided this corporation through 2 mergers, survived a challenging board vote, and transformed Monarch Federal into a highly respected regional bank in the Southwest. And yet, here she was, being treated like a potential criminal within her own establishment by a man who hadn't bothered to verify anything. Still, she kept her voice level. "Stephen, I strongly suggest you verify the account now. Just to be certain." Rather than doing so, Stephen turned slightly to Sherry, who had grown noticeably quiet. "Can you handle this?" "I have calls waiting," he said, already moving away. But before he could disappear into his office, Kendra retrieved her phone from her handbag. Not to shout, not to create a scene. Just a single call. But what followed that call would profoundly alter the atmosphere inside that branch. Stephen's door clicked shut behind him, but the tension in the lobby didn't dissipate. Sherry fidgeted uncomfortably behind the partition, her gaze flickering between her monitor and Kendra. The other customers pretended not to listen, but every ear was keenly attuned. Kendra stood still for a moment, then took a step back from the counter, phone still in hand. She didn't place the call just yet. "Sherry," she said softly, Do you see the name on that ID? Sherry hesitated, looked down, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. Kendra Braxton. Kendra offered a slight smile. And when you input that name into the account system, what information appears? Sherry's fingers tapped tentatively across the keyboard. A few seconds passed. Her eyes widened slightly. I see an executive account. Kendra Braxton, CEO. She stopped herself, glancing quickly towards Stephen's office. You weren't aware I was coming, Kendra said. And I preferred to keep it that way. But now that you've confirmed my information matches, is there anything else you require? Before Sherry could reply, the office door reopened. Stephen reemerged, holding a clipboard he clearly didn't need. Is there still an issue? He asked sharply, his eyes darting between them. Kendra didn't raise her voice. Sherry has accessed the account. It confirms my identity. You can proceed with the withdrawal now. Stephen let out an exaggerated sigh. Look, lady, Miss Braxton, Sherry interrupted, almost instinctively. Stephen blinked. I just checked. Her account indicates she's the CEO. Stephen's face twitched, then hardened. Oh, so now we're just accepting customers' claims and letting them indulge and dress up, he snapped, turning back to Kendra. You arrive here with no assistant, no advance notice, dressed like you're going to the grocery store, and we're all just supposed to accept you're someone important. Silence fell. You could hear the ballpoint pens cease their scratching. Even the man in the landscaping shirt put his phone away. Kendra looked at him for an extended moment, the same way she might scrutinize a quarterly report that didn't add up. I wasn't aware my attire required approval to access my own funds, she responded. Stephen's jaw muscles tightened. It's not about your clothing. It's about adhering to procedure. You are not adhering to procedure, Kendra stated firmly. You refused to verify my identity before making assumptions. You spoke to me with sarcasm and dismissed valid identification. And now you're attempting to instruct me on how to perform my role? Instruct you? Stephen scoffed and turned to the other employees, throwing his arms out. Can someone please escort this woman out before she creates a disturbance? Sherry flinched. Another teller, a man in his 30s named Corey, rose from his station but remained stationary. He simply looked at Kendra, studying her features, really looking at her now. Wait a minute, Corey murmured. Kendra Braxton. I've seen her before. She delivered that speech at the Phoenix conference last summer about ethical banking. That's her. Stephen didn't react immediately. He blinked slowly, as if his mind was catching up. Kendra took a step forward, composed, self-possessed. Her voice wasn't elevated, but her words carried weight now. I gave that speech because I believe individuals in positions like yours shape how customers perceive our institution. You have made it abundantly clear how you perceive me. He opened his mouth to speak again, but Kendra raised a hand. This discussion is concluded. You had an opportunity to handle this with professionalism. You chose otherwise. She turned, finally pressing call on her phone. It rang twice. Lorna, hi. I need to be connected to HR right away. Yes, this location. Then she ended the call. Stephen looked at her, appearing uncertain whether to scoff or laugh. But the energy in the room had unequivocally shifted. He was no longer in control. The employees sensed it. Even the customers felt it. But Stephen didn't grasp how rapidly things were about to escalate. Kendra didn't move far from the teller window. She remained rooted, phone in hand, her gaze steady on the entrance to Stephen's office. There was no yelling, no threats, just a silence that enveloped the room, causing everyone to stand a little taller. She could have erupted. She had every reason to. But this wasn't about demonstrating dominance. That wasn't her style. Inside, she was recalling something. Her initial branch visit as a newly appointed regional director, back when she was still advancing within Monarch Federal. She had entered a location in Albuquerque, and the manager, at least politely, had asked if she was lost. She had laughed it off then. A young black woman, sharp suit, fresh off a promotion. She was accustomed to the raised eyebrows. But she wasn't laughing now. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft notification, an incoming call. She answered. Yes, I'm here. No, he doesn't know yet. I'll hold. Stephen had returned to his office, but hadn't shut the door this time. He was observing her, arms crossed, still arrogant, still clinging to the conviction that she was bluffing. Corey whispered something to Sherry, who nodded slowly. One of the older customers, a woman with a checkbook and a walking stick, leaned towards Kendra. Sweetheart, are you all right?
That man was out of line, she said.
Kendra offered her a gentle smile. Thank you. I'm handling it. The phone clicked. Kendra, it's Marlene from HR. I have the regional VP looped in. Good. I'm at the Speedway branch in Tucson. I've just been refused withdrawal service. The branch manager questioned my identity, ignored verification, and dismissed me in front of customers. Silence on the line. Then Marlene spoke. Did he know who you were? I informed him twice. The voice on the other end changed. The calm tone turned cold. We'll address this. Give us 3 minutes. Kendra ended the call, took a deep breath, and finally turned to face the room again. Sherry, visibly trying to keep her hands from trembling, cleared her throat. Miss Braxton, do you still wish to process the withdrawal? Kendra looked at her. Young, nervous, probably early 20s, likely just trying to get through her day. No, she said gently. Thank you, though. You managed that situation as best you could. Sherry looked a mixture of relieved and guilty. I wasn't certain what to do. You relied on your system. That's what you're trained for. What's crucial is how you react when something doesn't seem right. And you responded with curiosity. He responded with authority. A moment passed. Stephen emerged again, walking slower this time, that same clipboard still tucked under his arm. Still expecting your backup? He chuckled just once. You know, if you genuinely are who you claim, there are more professional ways to handle things. You could have called ahead or brought proper identification. Instead, you arrive here as if you're setting me up. That's the key point, she said. I didn't have to engineer anything. You accomplished that entirely on your own. Stephen frowned, unsure if it was an insult. Then the branch phone rang. Everyone heard it. Corey answered. Monarch Federal, Speedway branch, yes. One moment. He looked at Stephen. It's for you. Stephen took the phone slowly, as if it might bite him. Hello? Yes, this is Stephen Aldridge. His eyes flickered to Kendra. Yes, she's still present. He paused, then nodded once. Understood. He hung up and walked back to the center of the lobby, looking around as if just realizing the entire room had been observing. Miss Braxton, he said, his voice now slightly unsteady. Can I speak with you privately for a moment? You had your opportunity, she replied. But Stephen was about to learn that the apology he hadn't planned to offer was already far too late. For the first time since she entered, Kendra didn't need to utter a word. Stephen stood there, visibly attempting to collect himself, his fingers pressed flat against the clipboard as if it offered stability. But whatever confidence he possessed upon arrival was rapidly diminishing. Look, he began. Perhaps things became a bit tense. It's been a demanding morning and— Stop, Kendra said, her voice sharp enough to halt him mid-sentence. A silence fell over the branch. Sherry pretended to focus on her screen. Corey didn't even bother pretending. The customers remained frozen, all eyes fixed on the woman in the navy blouse who hadn't raised her voice once, but now commanded the entire room with just 5 letters. I don't need an explanation, she added. I require accountability. Stephen flinched, as if the word had struck him. You're seriously blaming me for following security procedures? No, she stated. I am holding you accountable for not following procedure. You refused to check my ID. You ignored system verification. You made it personal. He started to speak again, but she didn't stop. You failed to pause and consider. You didn't ask a single clarifying question. You decided who I was based on my appearance, how I spoke, what I wore. And that's not merely negligent, Stephen. It's hazardous. You work in finance. You cannot afford to operate based on assumptions. At that precise moment, the front doors opened. 2 individuals entered, both dressed in dark blue suits. One was Marlene from HR. The other, tall with sharp spectacles and neat haircut, was Roland Pierce, the bank's regional VP. They walked directly towards Kendra, bypassing everyone else. "Kendra," Roland said, acknowledging her with a quiet nod. "We arrived as quickly as possible." "I appreciate it," she replied, her tone still calm, but now razor-edged. Roland turned toward Stephen. "Let's relocate to your office, Stephen." Stephen froze. "Wait. I wasn't even aware she was coming." She gave no notification. Roland didn't waver. "That is not the issue." Stephen looked towards Marlene for support, but she was already shaking her head. "We've reviewed the live branch feed," she said. "There's audio, there's video. It is perfectly clear." "I was just doing my job," Stephen exclaimed, his voice rising. "You can't just—" "You are not being terminated because she is the CEO," Marlene interrupted. "You are being terminated because you disregarded established protocols, demonstrated blatant disrespect, and created an unsafe environment for a client and for your personnel." He stood there, stunned. Kendra finally stepped forward. "I could have dismissed you the instant I re-entered this building. But I wanted you to grasp why this matters." She gestured around the room. "Look at everyone here. They didn't know who I was. They witnessed everything unfold. They saw how you treated someone you perceived as unimportant."
She paused.
"That leaves a mark on our reputation, Stephen. A stain that doesn't simply wash away. It impacts all of us. And I will not permit that stain to spread." Stephen's shoulders sagged. He looked small now, suddenly uncertain where to stand or what to say. Marlene gently gestured him towards the back office. He offered no resistance as the door clicked shut behind them. A strange silence followed. Not the awkward kind, but a heavy one, as if the atmosphere in the room had shifted. Kendra turned towards the remaining staff. "I will address the team in 5 minutes," she said quietly. "Please finish assisting your customers." Then she walked to the far end of the branch and sat in a chair, alone for the first time since entering. But the moment wasn't for reflection yet. There was one more truth the staff needed to hear. 5 minutes felt like 30. Little was said. Customers murmured, some quietly leaving, others lingering out of curiosity. The staff kept their gazes down, but their ears were sharp. Something fundamental had changed, and everyone sensed it. When Kendra stood back up and walked to the center of the lobby, it wasn't as the woman who had requested a withdrawal earlier. It was as the leader everyone now recognized. "Could I please speak with the staff?" she asked, her tone softer now. Sherry, Corey, and the other 2 tellers left their stations and gathered around. The assistant branch manager, a man named Dennis who had remained silent throughout the ordeal, also stepped forward. "I know this morning was unexpected," Kendra began, "but I want to clarify something important. Not just about the events that transpired, but why it must not be repeated." They stood listening quietly. "I've dedicated 23 years to this bank. I started as an intern, shuffled papers, watched managers walk by without acknowledging me. I learned early on that some individuals only offer respect when they believe you've earned it, and others, they don't provide it unless you look a certain way." She glanced at Sherry, who appeared close to tears. Corey stood a little taller. "When I came in today, I didn't desire to be treated like a CEO. I simply wanted to observe the branch's operation, how people were interacted with if our stated mission of integrity genuinely resonated within these walls." Her voice didn't tremble, but it landed heavily. What I witnessed instead was a manager making a decision based on prejudice, without asking questions, without verifying anything. Just raw judgment. Dennis cleared his throat. "Miss Braxton, if I may, some of us felt that something wasn't right, but we weren't sure how to intervene without overstepping." "I understand," Kendra said. "And that's precisely why I'm addressing you now." She stepped closer to the group. "This isn't just about Stephen. It's about how we respond when we witness something improper. Not just for our customers, but for each other. That hesitation, that instinct not to overstep, that's what stifles progress before it even begins." Silence. Then, from the back, Corey finally spoke. "I've only been here a year, but I've seen managers disregard people. I didn't want to be like that, but I just froze today. I saw what he was doing to you, and I didn't speak up." Kendra nodded. But you are speaking up now. I knew something was wrong too, Sherry added quietly. I just wasn't sure if supporting you would jeopardize my position. It will not, Kendra assured her. Standing up when someone is being treated unfairly, especially in a professional setting, is never a mistake. One of the other tellers, an older gentleman named Leonard, looked over his glasses. Honestly, I think we've all seen Stephen behave like that before. Just not to someone with authority. That observation hung in the air. Exactly, Kendra said. And if he would speak to a CEO that way, how do you believe he treats customers when no one important is observing? No one needed to answer. Everyone already knew. She looked around at the group. Real people. Real faces. Real voices. The actual core of the company, not its branding or buildings or advertisements, but these individuals. Moving forward, she said, there will be a structured training session on client interactions and mutual respect internally. I will personally attend the first session because if we cannot hold each other accountable within these walls, she tapped the floor with her heel, we have no justification talking about trust outside them. A gentle ripple of agreement moved through the staff. Heads nodded. Shoulders relaxed. She concluded with one final thought. It's not about who you think someone is. It's about treating every individual with the same level of respect you would if you knew they had the power to make a decision about your career tomorrow. But Kendra wasn't finished yet, because there was one final insight the entire company needed to internalize. The staff meeting concluded quietly, with a few handshakes, a couple of lingering inquiries, and several extended, thoughtful gazes. Nobody left early. No one joked on their way back to their desks. Kendra didn't depart immediately. She went into the small break room, took a seat at the circular table near the vending machine, and pulled out her phone. Not to check messages, but to stare at the screen, contemplating, processing, absorbing the gravity of what had just occurred. It wasn't about pride, not today. It was about what could have happened if she hadn't visited that morning, dressed like any other customer. If she had sent an assistant, worn her CEO badge, or arrived flanked by executives. None of this would have transpired. Stephen would have smiled, offered coffee, bent over backward to be helpful, and nothing would have changed. She knew this truth intimately. She recalled a communication they had received months prior. A woman in Flagstaff had submitted a complaint, stating a manager had been dismissive, interrupted her, and refused to accept a check she was trying to deposit for her elderly mother. The case had been logged as resolved. The internal review concluded the manager followed procedure. But something about the tone of that letter had always stayed with her. The customer had written that it wasn't just what he said, but how quickly he had decided she didn't belong there. Back then, Kendra couldn't prove intent. Today, she hadn't needed to. A quiet knock drew her from her thoughts. It was Roland, the regional VP. He entered and closed the door behind him. Are you okay? He asked. Yeah, she replied. Just thinking. He sat across from her. I've worked with you for a long time, Kendra. I've never witnessed you terminate someone like that. On the floor, in front of staff, customers. I didn't plan to, she responded. Then why today? She leaned back in her chair, her voice calm. Because I needed them to see what accountability truly looks like in real time. No memos, no quiet transfers. Just the truth. Roland nodded slowly. Some people upstairs might suggest you took it personally. She looked at him steadily. It was personal. And if they don't grasp why, that's part of the same systemic issue. He didn't dispute her. Instead, he posed a question she hadn't anticipated. Do you think he would have treated me the same way? Kendra didn't hesitate. You were in a suit, Roland. You're 6'3" and wear a VP badge. He would have extended the red carpet. He nodded again, quietly this time. They sat in silence for a moment. Do you think the staff received the message? He finally asked. Kendra thought of Corey, of Sherry, even of Dennis, who had appeared genuinely shaken after it all.
They did, she said.
But more importantly, they felt it. And that lasts longer than a message. He stood to leave, then paused. Would you like me to handle the communication to the other branches? Kendra stood too, gathering her belongings. No, I'll manage that myself. You're going to visit them? Not immediately, she smiled, just slightly. But eventually. Might even leave the suit at home again. Roland grinned. Remind me not to be rude to any new walk-ins. She chuckled softly. You're safe. As he exited the room, Kendra took one last look around. The stale coffee pot. The half-empty bulletin board. The murmur of voices beyond the door. This wasn't just a place where financial transactions occurred. It was a mirror reflecting who they were when no one was watching. But before she could leave for the day, there was one final sentiment she needed to share with everyone. Before departing the branch, Kendra requested a brief announcement over the internal intercom system. Nothing formal, just a few words to conclude a day no one in that building would forget. Hi, this is Kendra Braxton. Thank you to all team members for your patience and professionalism this morning. I'll be departing shortly, but I wanted to convey one last thought, directly from me to you. Please meet me in the lobby if you have a moment. It didn't take long. The employees gathered again, some leaning on desks, others standing near the back. Even the security guard came in from outside. It was informal, but every pair of eyes was fixed upon her. Kendra stood in front of them, her hands loosely clasped. No notes, no prepared text. Today could have felt like a bad dream, she began. Something you might mention to your partner when you get home, or simply try to erase entirely.
But it won't be that.
Because today mattered. A few people shifted their weight, listening more intently now. I entered this morning not looking like the person you're accustomed to seeing in a company video, and I did so because I needed to understand what really happens here when no one feels they're being evaluated, when people believe they're simply dealing with just a customer. What I experienced was the unvarnished truth. She allowed that to settle for a second. But the truth extends beyond one manager's error. The real truth is found in how all of you reacted. Some of you froze. Some hesitated. And that's inherently human. But now you have witnessed what silence permits. And I hope you also saw what courage can accomplish. She scanned the room. Sherry was standing near Corey again. Leonard looked down at his shoes. Dennis, the assistant manager, stood with his arms behind his back, his expression unreadable. We frequently discuss leadership, Kendra continued. Most of the time, it sounds like strategic planning, performance metrics, board meetings. But genuine leadership, true leadership, it looks like holding the door open for a customer who's had a difficult day. It looks like speaking up when a colleague is out of line. It looks like refusing to be a passive observer. Her voice softened. Sometimes, leadership means undertaking the difficult action in plain sight, not because it's comfortable, but because people are watching. And you have the choice to teach them fear, or teach them bravery. She took a breath. Stephen will not be returning. That determination wasn't simple, but it was essential. Because a single incident like today, if left unaddressed, becomes normalized. And normalization morphs into policy. Then she smiled. Not the corporate CEO smile seen in press photos, but something warmer, more genuine, something that conveyed she had walked in their shoes, that she was one of them. I will be conducting visits to other branches in the coming months. Not to test anyone, but to engage and listen. And yes, occasionally, I will be dressed just as I was today. Light laughter rippled through the group. And if any of you ever encounter a situation where you are uncertain, ask yourselves one fundamental question. Would I treat this individual the same way if I knew they could walk into a boardroom tomorrow and make a decision regarding my job? If the answer is no, then it is not the correct way to treat them at all. Quiet agreement filled the space. She paused, looked around one last time, then added gently, "Thank you for listening. And thank you for remaining open to learning. Because that is how we evolve, not just as a financial institution, but as people." With that, she picked up her purse, offered a nod, and exited through the door. No fanfare, no security detail. Just a woman who had reminded everyone what respect truly signifies when the corporate suits are absent and the truth is revealed. Because leadership isn't about who is observing. It is about how you conduct yourself when you believe no one is. If this narrative resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our channel for more authentic stories that challenge our assumptions, what we accept, and what we believe leadership should embody.